Good evening and welcome to another episode of Green and White, brought to you by Argyle Life. For the second time this season, Argyle faced up against a former manager as Lowe dusted off the map to head down to home park with his Wigan athletic side. After Argyle had brushed aside Burton Albion last week, there was no cleaner sheet this time as Laurent Talai swept home penalty to put Argyle ahead, cancelled out by a Fraser Murray strike following the home side's defence failure to mop up. A lot of cleaning puns in there. I don't really know what that's all about. But anyway, have our panel of experts ready and waiting in the wings this evening. No Sam Down, as you can see. Unfortunately, he is busy ironing his shirt, ready for the Football Content Awards next week, which, on the subject of which, you can see the QR code on screen. Please go ahead and vote for us. We really do appreciate it. Right, let's get cracking. My three guests tonight, Finn, Graham and Adam. Finn, do you want to get things going? Give us the rundown of the game.
I think this is going to be one of the shortest ones that will ever appear on this podcast because
that'll make a nice change then.
Because it's not Sam Downs, that's what we're saying.
Well, that and it was a very, very boring game of football. First half, it was a very sort of slow start to the game. Nothing seemed to really get going until about 25 minutes. I would say that the most the sort of thing that sticks out in the mind in the first 25 minutes is Brendan Galloway giving away a foul after a poor touch after about 45 seconds and thinking that's not a very good start, and then nothing seemed to happen after that. Argyle hit the bar from a very good Talai shot. That was, a couple of inches lower, would have been an excellent strike and possibly put a different emphasis into the game. But yeah, it's hard to tell, obviously, isn't it? The old cliches, goals change games, and maybe that could have, but who's to know? And then, yes, Wigan, I don't remember having a shot, really, for the entire half. Lots of sort of tentative passing around the back, side to side. I think, to be honest, Lowe had done his homework. Wigan did a job on us. We weren't really able to create anything, particularly in the middle of the park. A couple of Barley Mumba sort of forays into the box kind of came to nothing. But yes, it's all in all a very sort of boring first half, and 0-0 was about the right score. It looked very evenly matched game with not a lot of pace or creative quality. And then second half, very much the same, to be honest. It looked like the only way we were going to create something up top was through something by Talai, basically, because I really felt that we missed any creative ability really in the middle of the park. I think McCabe is important for what he does. Boateng is important for what he does. But I think they have to play together because they both have limitations. Even if McCabe's is just he's inexperienced, I'm not sure he's yet the kind of deep-lying playmaker that you need when you don't have someone with the thrust of Bradley Ibrahim in the middle. So, yes, when we got the penalty, I'm not really sure what it was for. It looked very similar to the one that we got given against us versus Stockport, and very much sort of like I think the referees have been told to be a bit more hot on it and are sort of giving it for any pull in the box after they've already told the defenders to stop. So, yes, it was 1-0. Looks like we can do all right. Maybe see this out and just take the points and run. However, yes, I think with about Wigan's first or second shot of the game, They, you know, sort of, there was a couple of times where the players failed to communicate yesterday, and it caused a bit of uncertainty, both in the middle of the park and in the defence. And maybe that's the case of someone like Conor Hazard just coming back into the team, but he sort of was a bit hesitant to come out for the ball, sort of sliced it up in the air. I think that caused maybe a bit of panic, and Mumba did the same. I think somebody else did the same. Can't remember who it was. They sort of headed it when everyone was sort of out of position, and then I think it was Fraser Murray got him behind, and just I think Hazard could have done better. Maybe I need to watch it back, but I think it was a bit near postish. Maybe it was that it was so close to goal that it was hard to stop. But yeah, so that was it then. And then, to be honest, in the last 10 minutes, there wasn't any real danger of a second. But if any team was going to win that game, it would have been Wigan, because they were like the ones with energy coming forward. And but yes, very disappointing to end that 1-1, to be honest, because I really felt it was a game lacking in quality. And when you get that sort of, I guess you could call it lucky break with the penalty, you think, okay, they haven't got much in them now. Let's just see this out and take the 3 points. But, not to be, I suppose.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Just to drop in at this point, as a host normally say, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. At the minute, as you can see from the comment along the bottom from Aaron, we're having a few problems with getting any comments in. So it will just be like and subscribe this evening, potentially. Although that said, we've got a comment in now, so it seems to be sorted. But hopefully that is all sorted for you guys. Really appreciate you all tuning in. Graham, you were there at Burton. I there yesterday as well. And what did you think of the slight change in shape that we saw, kind of necessitated, as Finn said, by Tegan Finn coming in for Bradley Ibrahim? What did you make of that?
Well, I think the overriding issue was that Wigan played 5-4-1, and McCabe against Burton played much more advanced and took everybody up. We closed the gap between the midfield and the front two. This time, as he did with the Peterborough game, he sat really quite deep, almost in front of the back three, and there was quite a gap, and we just couldn't get going in midfield. I mean, credit to Ryan Lowe for the setup, which made it very difficult for us. But if you're ever going to beat 5-4-1, you've got to get wide. And I think we started off with actually a long clearance from Conor Hazard that went to Tegan Finn. I thought right over the top, Tegan put a cross in, and I think Barley had a shot blocked from it. I thought, well, this is promising. But from then on both flanks, we never got past their defence. And particularly second half, where I call it the Chuckle Brothers, where we were to you across the back three. Brendan Wiradu often had Tegan Finn free right in front of the Lyndhurst with Sorinola ahead, and very rarely worked that opportunity to get in and get behind or get a cross in, and they just stopped us playing. Having said that, to be fair, the wind was very difficult and unpredictable, and the less said about the referee, the better, because he was whistle happy. And one or two, I think Oseni was through a couple of times and mysteriously got called up for a foul, particularly one which he was clear and the guy took him and the ref gave it the other way. And I think Owen got booked for rightfully giving him a mouthful for the decision. But we huffed and we puffed. A couple of things to say: set pieces, corner routine from Tegan Finn into McCabe, I think it was, and until I peeled off the 6-yard box, and what a cracking shot that was. And then it, as Finn said, and a couple of inches lower goal, that might have made it a different game. But the penalty, having viewed it on the extended highlights, you can see the shirt ball, you can see the swing round from Williamson, and it was a penalty. And well, what can you say about that penalty? I don't think I've seen an Argyle player do a Panenka before. I mean, it wasn't even. I just thought he's going to wallop this.
We need Sam on the podcast to work out when the last time an Argyle player did linker.
I don't think I seriously can't remember anybody.
I think he's been asked the question already today, and he's failed to provide an answer. So that to me says we've never had one before.
And it was the supreme confidence and somebody on top of his game. Although he was incredibly frustrated throughout the game, the number of runs he made, and the ball was never slotted through. We never got beyond them. We never put it over the top of them for him to run on. And I didn't think the partnership with Owen Aseni worked as well as it did with Burton, because they were far more compressed in defence and didn't have the space. Perhaps I would have brought Bin Peppel on earlier to take the two central defenders and let Talai play off him as an option, because we didn't play any balls into the area or first and second challenges. And just finally, long throws, well, non-long throws, I should say. I think they headed everyone out. We didn't make one first contact or even second contact on any throw. So, Brendan can throw it, but it's a bit loopy and it doesn't get as far into the box as Suchi's throw does. I would just mix it up a bit because it's so predictable and we take so much time to set it all up. We're losing game time that could be otherwise used. So frustrating. I think, in fairness to Wigan, if I was in their shoes, I would have said that's a point well won.
Yeah, definitely. And as we said at Burton, wasn't it? It was that real ability for Aseni to run in behind and create that space, get the ball kind of high and wide and gain us territory from there. That was really really beneficial, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we did miss Bradley Abraham, and to be fair to Tegan doesn't play the same way. I mean, he's got great ability on the ball, ability to beat a player, but he wasn't really given the ball or given the chance. But his defensive work, I thought, was excellent. He really did cover, and I think Tom Cleverley made a point of that in the press conference.
Adam, last two home games, obviously the away form has kind of picked up finally, and then we kind of turn it around with only 1 point from our last two home games. And this inconsistency is perhaps something we're going to have to get used to with a young side, but at the same time, it's pretty frustrating, isn't it?
It is, and it's my fault. I should clarify, because the only one I've not been to at home this season is the Stockport game where we scored 4 and we've scored 3 in the rest where I have been. So sorry, everybody. I'm not planning to miss a home game anytime soon, and we will not be scoring any goals, in which case feel free to put the blame my way. In all seriousness, it is that situation, isn't it? And it is, as you say, Dan, very much a mark of a young team who are going to be inconsistent. And I think it's just a symptom or an example of where we are at the moment. And everything really that I see or have seen from the first 11 games of this season, bar the dreadful start, everything's kind of screaming mid-table at me right now. And this is what mid-table teams will do. They will 1 week look completely unbeatable, score 4 goals, look like they could easily score more, and the next week struggle to break a team down. Although I do think it was interesting how we're perhaps perceived and how Ryan Lowe has come down and looked at us as a threat, because going into that game, Wigan were, across any metric that you could look at, one of the most potent attacking teams in the league. They ranked excellently for XG, excellently for big chances. They liked to play in the way that a Ryan Lowe team is expected to play, on the front foot, with the 2 wing-backs being wingers, with the 1 holding midfielder getting forward. That's what they like to do. And then they turned up to Home Park, and as soon as I've seen the lineup, I'm thinking, looks like he's got a bit defensive here. And yeah, absolutely. So it proved, as Graham said, it was 5-4-1 on many occasions, really difficult to break down. And in a way, yeah, that is a compliment for sure, because it shows the threat that we can provide when we're on our game. And it just proved for us too difficult to break down, aside from the one moment where we do get a decision. I mean, I think it's one of those, I have seen those highlights, and yeah, you can indeed see the shirt pull happening. But it's also one of those where if you're giving that penalty, you have to give multiple a game. And I thought it was a really, really strange part of a refereeing performance we'll no doubt get onto a little bit later on. It was one inconsistency in some very, very strange inconsistencies so far. In this season of refereeing, and indeed that performance in particular. But the penalty itself, I mean, if you miss it, it gets replayed forever. But the fact it's gone in, the fact that I do believe, as everybody seems to, it's the first Panenka I've ever seen an Argyle player score, at least in regular play. It shows the confidence is oozing through the guy right now. It's so good to have a striker that is clearly full of confidence, believes he will score at every opportunity he gets, and he could with the shot that came off the bar, and incidentally the one where he's hit the side net in the first half as well, have had more on another day. So that's a positive. But yeah, that was the only breakthrough we made, and it is frustrating. It is a symptom of where we are, and I think it is all just leading itself towards this is going to be a season where it's like that. 1 week will look like world beaters, another week we're not going to be able to put any goals past anybody. I think that even if we take this game out of the equation, nothing's demonstrated that in the run of games from Stockport, where we've beaten them very well. We've got a fantastic win away at Luton in trying circumstances. We've beaten Burton, as we've discussed, in a fantastic performance. And sandwiched in between that is a 1-0 defeat at home to bottom of the league, where we never really looked like getting anywhere. It feels like it's going to be that sort of year, and we'll see if that transpires. There's obviously a long, long way to go. There's a transfer window in the middle, which we can look at to potentially improve. But yeah, it's frustrating, and right now I don't think it's going to stop there. I just wonder, actually, whether we're now in a situation where playing away from home might actually suit us. It's something I suspected may happen ahead of the Burton game, not to the extent that it did. I didn't think we'd score 4 goals, but there will be teams now who come to Home Park with the reputation, I guess, that we have been in the Championship last year, and just defend. As we saw with Lowe yesterday, he's not been minded to defend all season, and he turns up to Home Park with a back 5. That's what we're going to have to experience. And maybe when we go away to teams who are like Burton, for example, who, to be diplomatic, whose expectations are going to be lower than ours, maybe we'll see what we can do on the front foot. But do I think that frustration is going to continue? Yes. At home, in particularly, we'll see where it ends up.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, when we went 1-0 up, I was watching the game with Sam yesterday and couldn't help but look at the live league table and go, oh, hang on, we're only 4 points off the playoffs here. Things are looking up. But then, of course, we got dragged back down to earth pretty quickly, didn't we? Unfortunately.
I think when we scored, obviously very ironic, but like there was a chance of we're on our way to the Championship. So like that, but in like a serious point about that is like, I don't think we're going to get to playoffs because we're too inconsistent and we don't have the squad depth. However, it shows you that if you put a run of games together in this division, particularly this season, I don't think there's really real standout quality in this division. Like even I know we're yet to play Stevenage or Bradford, but I look at somebody like Cardiff, who I would say probably have one of the strongest teams in the division. And yes, they beat Leyton Orient 4-3 yesterday, but they also lost to Burton 1-0 in the week when we beat them 4-0. So I think it's one of those league seasons. So I think if you can get a run of games together, there's there's potential for us to propel up the table quite quickly. However, I think, as we all do, we have massive doubts whether we can do that. And yesterday didn't aid that at all.
I don't think I've got massive doubts that we could creep up the table. I really don't. I mean, if you take our last 5 games and replicated that for the rest of the season, we comfortably make the playoffs. We've got 10 points out of 15 in our last 5 games. 2 of those were away wins. So it's quite possible. We were 8 players out Saturday. Quite a few of those would be in the first team as starters, if you were to name your best side. So in the circumstances, we're doing okay. We're improving as the team. We, obviously, even in our promotion season, there were games that we lost at home and unaccountably drew at home. It happens, and then, unexpectedly win away. That's just football. And this League One season is proof of that. You just have to look at Luton, who've got spent a fortune on 4 strikers who've only scored from penalties. Huddersfield, the same. Other teams have paid big money and they're not performing relative to the amount of money they've spent. And then you look at the 2 teams at the top, they've barely spent a penny. But Stevenage, I think, have only played, 2 teams in the bottom half of the table. So their time for examination will come, I'm sure. Bradford, I don't know, maybe a force to be reckoned with, but there isn't any other side that I would say in League One that are now standout certainties for promotion, compared to what we thought at the start of the season, where we were all naming our choices, and none of them are front runners at the moment. In fact, I just see Steve Bruce has been sacked by Blackpool today, so
that doesn't surprise me.
No, we did, but he spent $1 million plus, and Dale Taylor hasn't scored. So everyone was saying, look, at the start of the season, look at the players that they've been signing, and they're second bottom. So it's a strange league. If we can get some consistency, and that's a big if we can, we get our players with experience back, particularly, then if we'd had Edwards and Mitchell in that team yesterday, I don't think we would have drawn the game. I think we'd have won it, because the calamity of the Wigan goal wouldn't happen with Mitchell, I don't think, because as we witnessed at Burton, Mitchell is the main voice in the defence. He's marshalling and controlling, and playing on the left side is against Burton. That, I'm sure that goal wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, as you touched on there, Graham, that we came into the game with another injury to Mitchell out the starting lineup, and had 8 players.
Daniel, wasn't an injury.
Oh, it was personal reasons. My apologies.
Reasons, yeah.
My apologies. Yes, indeed it was. Indeed it was. We'll move on from that then, and wish him all the best, of course. More important things than football, most definitely. I'm going to kind of sprinkle in the kind of questions that are coming in. Thank you for leaving all your comments, by the way. This one, Adam, you can take. From David, as you can see, can I just ask about Mumba? Is it me, or is he not any good at the moment? Looked hopeless yesterday. Each to their own. I thought we had good moments at left wing back, brought the ball up the pitch sometimes, but lacking in end product. Adam, what were your thoughts?
Agree entirely. And to be honest, it wasn't his best game. I certainly wouldn't go as far as saying he's not been any good, particularly when you consider that he's just come off the back of a really, really good performance away at Burton in that position, where he was genuinely fantastic and much like the player that we're used to seeing when we were last in League One. It didn't all come off for him, and he's I'm sure he'll be disappointed with that. But at the same time, he's attempted more dribbles than any other Argyle player on the day. He's tried to get us upfield. He's tried to play it on the front foot as we hoped. A couple of things have happened. A, is his end product wasn't quite good enough on the day, and B, he was lining up against an ultra defensive side and not given the space that I think perhaps he would have expected going into the game, based on how we know loads of teams like to line up. So I think I've seen comments like the one on screen saying he's a man of the match yesterday, and others saying that he's not been any good at all. I think my opinion probably lies somewhere between the two. It's was it his best day? He'll be the first to say no, it wasn't. But at the same time, I liked some of what I saw. He's clearly playing in his best position, which I think is something that needs to continue indefinitely, quite frankly. And he's coming off on the back of it of a very, very good game away from home. Like a lot of the side yesterday, they'll be disappointed that they weren't able to follow up what was a very good display at Burton with a win this time. It happens. We're inconsistent. We've gone over the reasons for that already. Mumba, one example of that.
Yeah, very much so, and I'd probably go with that in terms of he had moments and he had bad moments, and we want to see that consistency from him, hopefully. On the subject of which, again, if you're happy to take that as your kind of player review in depth, Adam, Finn, do you want to take a player from the starting lineup yesterday that you'd like to drill down into further?
Yeah, I think, I'll take. It's kind of hard for me yesterday because I don't think anyone massively stood out. However, I think I'd take Lowe McCabe, because I think it's like the first time I've watched him play, and despite what I said about maybe him not being the sort of deep lying playmaker in that position that we were sort of needed yesterday if we didn't have like Ibrahim in the middle. I thought he was very tidy and proactive. When the ball it was quite an even battle in midfield yesterday, and I thought a lot of the times he kind of looked to move the ball quickly in ways that as Graham had said before with Riradu, just didn't do once really. So yeah, I'd say I'm fairly pleased with him, because I think him as and Boateng as a partnership look like in certain games a partnership that could do well, particularly maybe if you've got less of the ball and stuff. So, but like again, Graham said, would you put him further forward? Yes, probably. Judging off that performance against Burton last week, but in general, for a sort of 20-year-old kid who's played 5-6 league games now in his whole career, I think he looks pretty capable at this level, and it's sort of encouraging to see, particularly when there was lots of question marks of him coming in on deadline day after Cleverley said he wanted an experienced midfielder.
On the subject of that, Finn, just as a follow-up question then, as the comment from Colby says on screen, it was a, let's say, unusual sub by, obviously it probably wasn't by Cleverley and more by Damon Lathrop, who was kind of guarding things on the touchline yesterday. But Jamie Patterson came on and played a deep-lying central midfield role. What did you make of that? Because it did seem like we did struggle to control the midfield after we made that change. Yes,
I thought that was super strange, and not that there was much momentum anyway. But I feel like if there was going to be any move, it sort of killed it. Like he came on and didn't make a difference at all. Because I'm sorry, but when has Jamie Patterson ever played deep lying midfielder in his career? I mean, if he has, then it's been a very small amount of times. Maybe the thinking is, well, Jamie Patterson is somebody who can kind of come on in that attacking midfield area, sort of left 10 area, and kind of make something happen, with his experience and stuff. But yeah, just to sub him on just for a like swap was particularly strange, with no formational change either. So it was somebody who didn't look like he'd ever played that position to it. Not that it was awful, he just didn't have an impact. It was like somebody who didn't know where he, the spaces he needed to be to pick up the ball. So yes, particularly strange, and I don't really have an answer for that in terms of why they didn't do, anything, and just did a like for like swap, if you like.
Yeah, and I think this is perhaps a bit harsh, potentially, given the position and his natural position. But I think for their goal, there's a split second where he could just tuck in and try and cut that pass out and doesn't quite. Although that said, the goal was a bit of a mess all around, wasn't it? Not helped by the wind and a couple of scuffs. Graham, do you want to take a player from the starting lineup yesterday that you'd like to comment on, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, when Burton everybody was 7 out of 10. And I'm struggling to give anybody 7 out of 10 from yesterday's game. My heart says to life for that ridiculous Panenka alone. But my head, I think, would go on for Ross, because increasingly he's looking a very accomplished defender. He wins most of his headers. He's good on the ball. But against Berne, he continually stepped forward from that central position. But because McCabe was so far back, he couldn't stride into the space that he did away at Burton. And I think that's quite telling. It's a shame, because he's got a good pass on him. He can read the game. I mean, he's a solid League One defender and probably can play at a higher level once he gets some game time into his legs. I mean, he's been a tremendous acquisition for us, and well done to the recruitment team for finding him, and credit to Tom Cleverley for sort of giving him time to adjust. And I think he did the press conference interviews, and he still says he's not up to full match fitness, or implied that. So we've got a very good player. So I would just give him the edge. Just going back to Barley, I don't think I've ever seen an Argyle player where I had my head in my hands so often, who's so brilliant on an occasion. And then I think it's lack of concentration, or lack of awareness. He switches off.
I also think it's got to be a lack of confidence at this point as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's got the confidence to beat his man, beat him again, and then turn inside. I don't think it's a confidence thing in beating this man. His defensive capabilities have always worried me, and that's when he switches off. If you look at the goal, he switched off. I mean, I think one of the Stockport goals, he switched off. He let the player run past him. He just switches off at vital moments, and that maybe is what's held him back from playing at a higher level. So he can improve his concentration, occasionally do the simple things rather than the more complicated things. But having said that, when you're playing a 5-4-1, if there's one player can weave his way past and outside and put a good cross in, it was probably him, but he didn't actually do that. And as somebody's just put in the comments, bam, bam, don't make him the last man for corners, because he's not that man. I mean, they occasionally, I think they played one up top occasionally at corners, probably because they thought they fancied the chances against Barley on the a long ball run. So I agree entirely. I wouldn't put Barley as the last man.
There was that QPR game last season, wasn't there? I think it was when the missed control from Mumba when he was fairly far back, playing right back.
You planted that back into my brain when I'd forgotten about it. And
yeah, sorry about that. My apologies. Right then, I think it's about that time. 32 minutes into the stream. Ref watch. Where on earth do we start with that? I mean, a couple of you touched on it. Shall we? Well, Adam, do your best to pick the bones out of that, because I've seen plenty of people saying it's one of the most baffling refereeing performances. Some people saying it's a homer, some people saying it's an awayer. I think, the fact that he's probably managed to pee off both sets of fans equally is probably quite an achievement, isn't it?
Says it all, right? Says it all. If I were of a Wigan persuasion right now, after I got some long-lasting delusions of grandeur out my head and come to terms with the fact that I'm the smallest cup winner in the history of the world, I'd probably be looking at that game thinking, and I think it would be quite reasonable to say that giving Argyle a penalty and not giving Wigan a penalty in that game was disgraceful. And I don't think that is unreasonable. I think we have to recognise it. I mean, we have had plenty go against us this season. The Stockport one, I think, Finn, you mentioned earlier, is a very, very obvious example of grappling that just isn't a foul. This one was a little bit more of a foul. I think you can see why he's given it, but to have not given anything the other way, when there was exactly the same thing happening in our box on a number of occasions, it was wrong. It was just wrong. And none of us have, and none of us should shy away from saying that has gone our way. The refereeing, the big refereing decisions this weekend, we've had enough go against us. So I guess it's about time. But if I'm watching that game in the away end, I'm sick to the stomach of what's happened and how the referees had an impact on the game. Which, yeah, I'd be calling it a disgrace then. I'll call it a disgrace now. It should not be happening like that at all. And I'm happy, don't get me wrong, that we've been on the right side of it, but it shouldn't be happening like that at all. And if that was the only thing that the referee had done all game that that was wrong, then perhaps we could stomach a little bit more. It wasn't. It was so strange the way that I can't remember which one of you guys mentioned it. Apologies, but the times where Asedi's got in behind and he's just beaten his man. He's just got past his man, used his strength, and been pulled up for a foul, which is just ridiculous. And there were a number of occasions actually where you could tell the referee wasn't sure about his decision and made it, and then did all he could almost immediately to try and even itself up. So I think there was a moment in the first half where he's given Wigan a free kick. They've played it in. There's a little bit of jostling with Sorinola, and he's gone, right, that's a foul to Argyle. He wasn't sure enough about his first decision that he's made a second decision and ultimately gone through the classic two wrongs make a right, which they don't, as any 5-year-old will tell you. It's really, really odd. I think also it may have only happened once. I don't know. I may be misremembering to the man's discredit, but there seemed to be a lot of occasions actually where he was in the way of play, in the way of either players or in the way like getting in with the ball and the ball ricocheting off him, which I guess can happen and can be unlucky. But when that happens a lot, it's a hallmark, I think, of the referee who doesn't understand the flow of the game that he's refereeing, doesn't understand where the game's going, doesn't understand where he should be. And naturally, that means he's not in good positions to make decisions. And I think we very obviously saw that with a number of baffling decisions that were made for both sides. And I don't know, maybe that's why. I don't know. Maybe it's a effect rather than a cause. But yeah, I know this isn't going to be the first time we've moaned about a referee this season. It's not going to be the last. It's nice, I guess, for a few to be on the other foot. We're moaning about a referee when he has given the big decision in our favour and not theirs. But yeah, that's a really, really poorly controlled game. And yeah, not many redeeming features I can come up with, to be honest.
I'm not going to say, that the referee was the main reason why the game was so poor. I think the main reason the game was so poor is because both teams had a lack of attacking quality, or creative quality at that. But I tell you what, I mean, he literally from the first minute they had to take kickoff at the end because he wasn't quite ready. So from about 1 minute to weirdly about 80, where he decided just to stop giving fouls. Pretty much every time there was any sort of physical contact, it was a foul for one of the teams. And I started getting frustrated that Argyle were being given fouls that weren't fouls, because it was like, I suppose at least he was being consistent on giving fouls that weren't fouls. However, it was just slowing the game down. It was like watching a game of rugby union at times, the amount of stoppages there were. And it wasn't for injuries. It was because the referee was saying, oh, yeah, free kick for you. Can you retake this, please? Oh, just gone out for a goal kick, but actually that was offside from the corner. Like, make your mind up, man. Seriously. I feel sorry that Joe Bell isn't on this podcast, because he'd be absolutely...
I think it's for the very best that Joe Bell is not on this podcast tonight.
Yeah, probably. But, I mean, it was just, honestly, I'm not one to usually get annoyed about referees, but he genuinely made that game more boring than it had to be yesterday.
He stopped all flow. I mean, it was bad enough with the wind making it tricky, but the number of times there was contact, not an obvious foul, and he blew up both sides, and it stopped the flow of the game and made it the spectacle that it was.
There were 7 yellows as well yesterday, weren't there? Which is like you normally see in a pretty kind of violent, like niggly little game, and it just didn't feel like that at all. So for there to end up with 7 yellows seems balmy, didn't it?
Well, I think that sums it up. I mean, I don't know. It does seem this season that we've had a run of referees of similar vein that I can't actually recall particular. Maybe this, not even the Stockport game, where we've gone, referee a decent game. It just hasn't happened. Funny enough, the way Burton possibly is, but we may be influenced by the frustrations of the performance and the outcome that we're giving it a disproportionate view. I've seen there've been 2 or 3 this season that have been of similar vein. Like as somebody said, as Graham Berne said, it's a contact sport. None of the tackles were malicious. None of the fouls that he gave. I mean, the Aseni foul was incomprehensible because Aseni was ahead of him. So how could he foul him from behind? I mean, that's just. And the fact that he was clear was even that. I think that set the tone for the crowd were on his back after that, and he didn't do anything to allay that apart from giving the penalty.
A question that's come in from this pod zone, John Alsop, which you can take, Adam, is he wants to know whether he thinks that this kind of grappling in the penalty area, do you think this is some kind of new directive that EFL refs have been given? Because that's 2 in a couple of weeks now that have been given for very, very little, seemingly.
I think it was. I think it's something that, or at least at the very top level, was mentioned as something that the classic. There's always seems to be something they want to clamp down on, and this year it's grappling in the area, which in itself is noble, and in itself is something that should probably be looked at. I think it irks many actually when referees stop the ball coming in, delay a corner or whatever to talk about players and say, oh, make sure you're not fighting each other. It would never happen at any other time. There'd never be a time a referee says, oh, make sure you don't commit a foul because otherwise I'll give a foul against you. You know, yeah, obviously, right? So I think in a vacuum, dealing with grappling in the area and calling penalties when there is an undue amount of holding is fine. But that's not just what's happening here. Yes, there is absolutely an argument that the foul on Salah yesterday is a foul and is a penalty. But it clearly wasn't the only time in the game where grappling was happening. It was happening in both penalty areas, pretty much in every single set piece. It just so happens that, oh, do you know what? I've decided to pull you up for this one. You either tackle it by giving a foul every time, or you let it go. You don't do both. You don't do neither. Yeah, I mean, you can't do both, obviously. You don't do neither. I mean, that's the worst of all worlds because you end up with this blatant inconsistency where every weekend one team is going to feel a benefit and one team is going to feel a detriment through referee decisions through no real fault of their own. Against Stockport, it was us who felt the detriment, and yesterday it was Wigan who felt that. You've either got to do it all the time or not at all. I think John is right. I think it is a directive, but it's clearly not being deployed or acted upon by referees as it ought to be. And I just wonder if, much like the start of a couple of seasons ago when the directive was, we're going to play the proper amount of injury time now, whether this one's going to die out in a little while, as that one eventually did, because the referees just didn't enforce it correctly, and it was better off not doing. If we're going to have this lottery of giving penalties every week for grappling and sometimes just let it go when we feel like it, it's better off we do nothing at all.
Yeah, totally agree. They're fighting an uphill battle on that one, but it will be interesting to see, as you say, with their other directives, will they actually stick with it for a while, or will they do what they did with, for example, the added on time thing and the kicking the ball away thing, where they gave up on it after about 6 weeks, seemingly, and just resorted, going back to type, basically.
Sorry, what does anyone know here? Am I making this up that it's been brought in and no one's over? The whole thing about goalkeepers taking 10 seconds and then not
8 seconds.
8 seconds, yeah.
And
he whistled a couple of times, didn't he?
The referee's hand goes up after 5.
Yeah.
And a couple of games, I've actually heard the referee counting it out loud. And I think the tickle was very close once or twice. I've got somebody who sits in front of me who meticulously counts every time. And to his credit, to be fair. And if he's watching, one job, Bob. One job linesman, you got one job. We call him one job, Bob. So he does the goalkeeper kicking count as well for us. And twice tickle exceeded the 8 seconds. So
as I was going to say, has anyone
the ball outside the area as well? He carried the ball out.
Yes, indeed.
Before he kicked it. So Lino, where were you?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I was going to say, has anyone seen a court, because it's a corner that you get for exceeding the 8 second rule? Has anyone seen any of that in any football since that's come in?
I think it's happened once in the Premier League in a Spurs game, I want to say. I may well be wrong, but I seem to remember it being called on one of the. Do you know, it might have been the same weekend where we were playing Bolton, because I remember not being there and watching it on Soccer Saturday and thinking, oh, that's been called. And it just doesn't seem to have happened since. There are a couple of semi-serious points to make on it. One slightly less so is no, that 8-second count does not count for goal kicks. The guy sitting next to me on Saturday, you do not get to count to 16 when a goal kick's being taken and say that should have been a corner. It's not how it works. Secondly, I think it happened a couple of times yesterday. The 8-second count can be discontinued, as it were, if an attacking player is actively blocking the keeper from playing it out. I think we saw an indirect free kick given to both teams yesterday when that happens. And yeah, you obviously, if a player standing directly in front of the goalkeeper for 8 seconds, preventing him from releasing the ball, then obviously we don't want to see that. So yeah, that can happen. But yeah, the 8-second thing does exist. I think it's been applied precisely once, as far as I'm aware of, at any level of football. So maybe we'll see it again. Yeah, it's much more likely than not to be curtailed than it is applied, I feel.
Maybe that means the rule's working. Who knows? I'm going to move on from Ref Watch to a Facebook question that we've had come in from a Damien Goodall. Graham, you can take this one if you like. What has Dale got to do to get on? Finn was ineffective all game, rarely seems to win the ball back or make a tackle. What do you make of that?
Well, I'd say it's a little bit unfair on Tegan Finn, because actually, I say defensively, he was very good and he never got the ball to be active going forward. I don't know why he didn't. And he's got the ability to beat players, as we know, as we saw at Burton with the 2 nutmegs as soon as he come on. So he can do it. I'd agree. I would have, notwithstanding that, I would have brought Owendale on 60, 65 minutes, because he can play wide. He's got championship nous and experience, and I think it would have been the right move. In fact, we only had 2 subs, I think, from memory. So, yeah, I agree with Owendale. I mean, at Burton, he was mysteriously doing what looked to be like a late fitness test, but I don't know whether he's fully up to speed. I mean, we don't know, you know. But I was surprised that Owendale didn't get on, and I would have put him on in place of Tegan, definitely.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Finn, looking at the bigger picture, 13 points from 11 games now. The inconsistency continues, as we say. What do you think over like the next month or two we need to do, or we can do, to kind of improve that consistency and start getting up the table, maybe somewhere towards the playoffs?
Well, I do think in a game like yesterday, where it felt like, you know, if any team, you know, took it by the scruff of the neck a bit, they would have won that game. That we at home can move the ball a bit quicker. In particular, just move the ball a bit quicker. It doesn't have to be like a massive formation change. I would say that we look much better with the 3 at the back, with the personnel that we've got. So I think it's important that we stick to that in the 3-4-1-2. I would like to see us do 3-1-4-2, but like I mentioned at the start of the pod, I'm not sure if Boateng, if we had a player that had the qualities of Boateng and McCabe in one player, we might be able to do it, but I think we need 2 at the moment. So withstanding that, I genuinely think, particularly in home games, where, well, like we said, it might become a thing that teams know that they can just do a low block and sort of restrict their opportunities. We just got to find the wide men quicker. In this formation, you have to find the wide men quicker. And like Graham mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Werribee didn't do that once. I was disappointed with the amount of times that Ross stepped into defence. You know, there just wasn't a lot of that. And maybe, yeah, and the other thing is, month or two, try to not get any more injuries. So I'd be putting a lot of pressure on the physios to, frankly, do a better job than they have been, because yeah, obviously we found out that Mitchell was for personal reasons, but having said that, we still had 8 players out yesterday, you know. So yeah, that's not sustainable. So I think those are 2 main things, basically. Move the ball quicker, because I think we've seen evidence that this formation can work now. So, you know, let's keep trying. And, you know, Tom Cleverley did say that game kind of summed up our season. We're not there yet, which was kind of encouraging for him to say, in a way, because he knows it sounds like he knows the ceiling of this team. But yes, I would be on a slightly different subject. I'll be interested to know how much of the directives in terms of substitutions and not substitutions was actually made by Tom Cleverley yesterday, or whether he trusted Lathrop to make those decisions, because that really didn't help. So, but yes, I would say the two main things would be moving the ball quicker and stop getting so many injuries.
Adam, as we no doubt have heard, the game at Mansfield Town next week has been postponed due to international call-ups. Therefore, we've got the lovely 2-week international break that we might have thought we'd seen the back of after our relegation from the Championship. Is it, as cliches might put it, a good time for the international break to come?
Absolutely yes on one count, because I'm going to be in Latvia next weekend following that international break, and it means I don't miss anything, which was not the case for Stockport. So great news if you're me specifically, perhaps not great news for my record of watching Argyle. And in the bigger picture, yes, because it does give us more time to work on it. It does give us more time for injuries to heal and get some players close to recovery, which we do need. Of course we do. There were 8 players out yesterday. I don't think Seb Campbell would have expected to make the bench, but he had to, given the circumstances. That needs to be addressed, and hopefully this fortnight can do that. I am cautious, though, and I always have been cautious, I think, a few times this season, of saying, okay, well, when we get over this injury crisis, we'll have all the tools there, we'll be able to fly, we'll have everything there. This injury crisis does not feel like it's just going to end. Does not feel like in a couple of weeks we'll have players back and then we'll be absolutely fine. It's been almost like a game of whack-a-mole at this point, where you will see a couple of players recover from injury, but we'll get that dreaded tweet on the Thursday press conference or whatever it is. Oh, so-and-so is now out for another couple of months because they felt something in training. It's not just because we haven't got a game next week, and it doesn't mean we're not going to have players pulling up with serious issues. It almost feels like it's getting worse, not better. Yes, Mitchell's absence was personal reasons. Of course, we wish him well. Of course, we do. But the rest of them were out because of injury. And I think in every single game this season, we've been mentioning that there are players injured. There's an injury here. Oh, by the way, we're dealing with injuries. Oh, there's an excuse here, we're dealing with injuries. Yes, we are. Of course we are. But how do we stop that? How do we make sure we are getting players fit to play, who are ensuring that they are available for selection when we need them to be? Hopefully, this 2 weeks will help, and hopefully it will that time will be a great healer with some of them. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if we came back for the Wimbledon game in a couple of weeks and we either didn't have players back, aside from perhaps Mitchell and Ibrahim and Edwards, who are suspended, or we had additional injuries that have happened in these last couple of weeks, or the forthcoming couple of weeks. So it's really tough to see how this ends. Really tough to see whether this will be exactly what we need to get players out on the grass, get players fit, and get players back in the action. I agree with Finn's point, to be honest. I'm not necessarily sure, is it the case of the physios, is it a case of training, whatever, but I think pressure needs to be put on that department. So, guys, what the hell is going on here? We've gone into practically every game this season feeling like we've got a significant amount of absentees, and it's not going to stop anytime soon at this rate. 2 weeks may help, 2 months off might be a great help, but we probably come back with a couple more knocks as well. I don't know where this ends, and it's starting to. I say it's starting to bother me. It's bothered me all season, but I can't see a way out of this spiral of pain that we're getting with injuries. And I'm just hopeful that's being taken on board in the background, and we're going to have some good news soon. Maybe that fortnight helps. We'll soon find out.
To play devil's advocate slightly on that, though, and I'll bring Graham in on this point. Do you think we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot slightly in terms of there seems to be a very much a lack of synergy between Tom Cleverley's comments of saying he'd like quite a small squad at the start of the season, and then for us to sign quite a few players that have historically been quite injury prone? Do you think we've kind of set ourselves up for failure in that respect?
Well, two of the players that were signed who were injury prone were Caleb Watts and Amici. both with hamstring issues, and they both got hamstring issues as to why they're not playing. Belarus had an injury history, but as far as I'm aware, hasn't been out because of injury. But on Adam's point, I'll just make the point that Arsenal and Tottenham have got more injuries than we have, having played half the games. Now, one of the reasons the Arsenal fans are saying exactly the same. And one of the reasons were given was because of the change in the way players are playing now. A lot of sprints, the closing down, and the hamstring pulls, the knee twists are reflective of the increased workload that players are doing as a result of the change in the way games are played now. And Tom Cleverley's mentioned a couple of times that we're running more distances this season than last. And if we've got players who are susceptible to injury, it can't be entirely a surprise that they've got injured. So I think it's 5, is it, who were injured until I think it's only 5. Such, Amici, Watts, who else injured for a while.
Mackenzie,
who hasn't started a game.
Yeah.
So that's 4. So I'm not sure the injury crisis is as bad as people are portraying. Given, how many injuries are elsewhere in League One? I don't know, but certainly look, the figures are available for the Premiership, and I was really surprised how many teams had 7, 8, 9 players out injured, hamstrings, knee injury. Yes, Pleggy as well. Sorry. So Suchi's got a minor knee injury, knee twist. Pleggy, knee, Amici hamstring, and Watts hamstring. So those are injuries I would suggest are possibly caused by the additional workload, and not necessarily any other reason related to Harper's Park pitch or what the work the physios are doing. It's just part and parcel of football today. And I know Arsenal fans particularly are concerned at the number of injuries they've had.
I think it's
And Finn, sorry, go on, Graham.
So,
Adam, whoever was speaking.
That's an argument that I could appreciate had we been going through like an injury crisis where it was a case of, there's lots of players that are injured at the same time, but don't worry, we'll get them back. Okay, yes, there will be a couple of injuries that are objectively unlucky. It's the nature of the beast. But we've gone into practically every single game this season with significantly more injuries than is manageable, with a so-called smaller squad, with the fact that we've signed players who are injury-prone. The synergy just isn't there right now. And there's clearly something up. Is it up with the terms of recruitment? We should probably stop trying to assign injury-prone players. Is it up with the case of what's going on with the physios? Maybe. In which case, we need to put pressure on that department and change it. Is it a case that the style of play is different? There's more high intensity. I'll get that word out eventually. High intensity sprints. Maybe. But maybe that's then a case of, okay, well, maybe we can look at the way that we play. If we are in a position where we go into games where we've got a small squad and injury crises, if you want to call them that, are going to impact us more, then maybe that's something we need to look at in one way or another. And, I would love it to be the case that we come back in a couple of weeks and we've got no new injury concerns, players are coming back. But my experience this season has not been like that. It's been quite the opposite. The injury crisis that I do believe we're in it only seems to be going in one direction. And I'm just really concerned that if that continues, like say, for example, we get into the next game and that again that tweet comes out on the Thursday and it's Lawrence Alai's out for 2 months. That's an immediate disaster for our prospects and the way it's going. And can anyone say that with the way that things have been working, with the way that injuries have been piling up at Argyle, that's unlikely? I hope it is. God, I hope it is. But
I feel like before every game, one of us mentions, what happens if Alai gets injured?
Yeah, for sure. And it just if we were to get a load of injuries at one time and we had to go into 1 or 2 games where we had players absent, that's unfortunate. When you're going into every single game with too many absentees, that's a problem. Now, the cause of the problem can be debated till the cows come home, but it's a problem. And we need to find ways of resolving that maybe in the next 2 weeks, but certainly in the next 2 months before the transfer window opens.
I think the interesting point is, and Dan, you said 13 points out of 11 games, but if you take off the first 4 that we lost, that is 13 points out of 7 games, which actually is close to promotion form. And we've achieved that with the injury crisis that Adam suggests, which possibly suggests that our squad is deeper and better than we might have thought at the start of the season.
Yeah, and you could argue that's a kind of arbitrary kind of point at which to kind of say, you know, I'm going to start measuring it from there. But that was also the time that Talai came in. So exactly, I think that is very telling that, you know, we've got 13 points from 7 games with Talai and 0 points goals from 4 games without him. And that does really highlight his importance. And, you know, as Adam was saying, if he gets injured, we are bang in trouble. I think there's very little doubt about that. Finn, and I'll try not to bang on about the 101 point season because there are members of this podcast that do that far too much, as we know, not naming names. But in that season and the season before as well, we had the luxury of bringing on quality and real depth of quality, making various subs and bringing on games to win games or see games out. Yesterday, we only made 2 subs. And that's really going to have an impact on us if we can't do that regularly, especially as the season goes on and the fixture list piles up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was literally speaking to a good friend of mine who I sit next to at Argyle, Joe. If you're watching, he probably is. Today, actually, that in the 101 point season that nobody talks about, we had Hardy and Ennis to bring off the bench at point. Now, I know that's like a ridiculous sort of strike force, and we had Sam Cosgrove, who, yes, might have had a purple patch season, but scored 10 goals for us as well. So we were just blessed with, you know, we were blessed with fitness and a deep squad. But yeah, I mean, Aseni has actually done a pretty good job as a sort of second striker to Talai. But I just don't think that, and it might take time, but right now, Bin Peppel is not at the level you need to come on and impact the game. I think when it's like 1-1 at home. And yeah, probably the most creative player we had to bring off the bench yesterday was Jamie Patterson, and we decided to play him deep line, sort of in deep midfield. So yeah, I don't know. It really is a problem. Like, you know, we don't have. It's not like it feels like if we aren't winning the game with 10 minutes to go, we're not going to win the game because we've tried everything we can try, and there's no one else to bring off bench who can like sort of nick a goal or anything like that. So I do think it's a glaring difference. I will row back on my statement, which I kind of queried a few weeks ago, which was that I think this squad is about the same level as the one that got relegated, because actually I think that the 3 players we've brought in McCabe, Talai, and who else was it? Oh, Ross. Have proven to greatly improve that. However, yeah, I do think that the sort of the difference between a 101 point season and who we can bring off the bench. Now, again, you're not gonna do 101 points. That's a once or twice in a lifetime thing. But certainly, if we're talking about the playoffs, that's something we greatly need to. If our ceiling is the playoffs this season, let's say, then it's something we greatly need to address in January.
But interesting, if we had Watts and Amici on the bench, would they be 2 of the quality players that could make a difference?
Yeah, you do make
15 minutes.
You do make
20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely, you do make a good point. Yeah.
Chaps, has anyone got any other points they want to raise on yesterday's game, or shall we move it on?
Right, very, very quickly, I'll try and make it one line. Brendan Galloway played 90 minutes and looking comfortable. Great to see. Hope it carries on. Hope his leg doesn't fall off soon.
Very much so. Yeah, indeed. Just a shout out at this point to Argyle women who beat Bournemouth 2-0 this afternoon, and also tied into that. We're very excited. You might have seen Aaron put some things up on socials. We've got Jasmine Bishop and Lexi Sanders joining our team, who are going to be writing some articles for us and raising the profile of Argyle women, which we're very excited to be able to do. So there's been a change.
Dan,
Sorry, Graham.
Just to say, next Sunday, I think Argyle are second, Argyle women are second, and Bournemouth are top. And we're playing Bournemouth at home next Sunday, 2 o'clock kickoff. So that anybody interested in seeing a top of the table clash, I've been twice this season and enjoyed it. And they're impressive to watch. So get to Home Park 2 o'clock Sunday.
Couldn't put it better myself, very much so. There's been a change, as you have probably seen online, in off the pitch, as we could put it. So, as we know, Andrew Parkinson left his role as CEO, but he has now been replaced by Paul Berne. I will read out the quote from Simon Hallett upon his appointment. Paul brings a wealth of experience to the role, having held several high-level positions across a range of sectors. He's been an important and valued board member since 2019 and will now step into a permanent role with the club following Andrew's departure. He will bring a freshness and energy to the role that will lift the whole club as we continue the rebuild both on and off the pitch. I want to welcome Paul to Argyle in his new role and look forward to seeing him build on the excellent work Andrew implemented before him. So it's an interesting appointment, and I think Paul did the presentation at the fans forum, didn't he, of basically answering the question, "Where's the money gone?" as the chant was going in that Leyton Orient game, and seemed by all accounts to do a very, very good job at presenting that. So I guess, Graham, the question will be is hopefully you can kind of carry on a lot of that good work.
Well, 2 things to say. He's been at the club for, I think, six seasons. He's been fully involved with the Argyle Community Trust from that point. He's been a director of the Argyle women's team as well. So he's well integrated into the decision-making process at Home Park. But I've had the pleasure of meeting him a few times. He's a people person. And we needed, at this time, we've had a lot of turbulence with a lot of not only players leaving, we've got a lot of staff that have left as well in top positions, and we need a period of stability, somebody who knows the club, and we've got that man. I mean, he as a chief executive, he's I think it was with what used to be called Trewithen Dairy, and that was an £85 million company turnover, so almost treble the size of Argyle in terms of a company. And he was with Gingsters and Sandworth Brothers before, so he's got experience at a high level. I don't think we've got any doubts or worries about our financial credibility with him in charge. But more importantly, and you can see that in his presentation, I mean, he's done a couple of fan forums presenting the accounts. He was across every detail and every element of the club. And I know Simon is absolutely thrilled at getting him, because I think it wasn't as perhaps straightforward as it might have been because he can't start until the 1st of January, so he's got to work his 3 months notice or whatever notice period it is. But I'm sure he was the man he wanted right from the start. And I'm really pleased, because anybody that meets him, he's interested in you. He's interested in every element of the club. And in his interview, he mentioned Forreston Park, which he's played a big part in, the community trust, the women's side. And people say, well, he hasn't got any football experience. And I think, well, hang on a minute. He's been in the club for 6 years through a period which is, the 5-year plan has been executed. Now we're back into a new 5-year plan. So I'm sure he was involved in the interviews for the last 2 appointments, because the board were viewing it on Teams as the process. So he's been involved in it. So I'm really, really positive about this. I think it's a great acquisition for the club at a vital time and we need stability and the real thing is he's a team player, people person, and interested only in the best interest of the club. And people will note this, will be at the club all the time.
Very much so. Finn, we over the last few years, a lot of changes have happened. We've had managerial changes, coaching changes, endless kind of turnover of players, and obviously various director of footballs changing in the coaching setup and the setup of the recruitment team. So much has changed over the last few years. As Graham put it there and mentioned the word a couple of times, now is the opportunity, hopefully, for some stability and an opportunity to push on.
Yeah. I mean, you'd hope so. I mean, that's what we are all hoping for. Especially after Muslic left, because that really threw what we perceived to be this season, what to happen this season, up in the air. So I really hope so. I'm not going to comment too much on Andrew Parkinson because famously I am his biggest fan. But yes, I really hope that Paul Berne does a great job for the football club, and I'm sure that I haven't been on the fact that he's been on the board for 6 years is the thing that most encourages me. I can't really comment on anything else because I don't really know. Graham's given his sort of opinion, but I've never met the guy, so I couldn't possibly comment. But I'm sure that Simon Hallett has made the decision that he thinks is best, and I sort of wish him all the best. And it's encouraging that he's been on board for 6 years or around the club for 6 years, because it shows that he clearly takes a genuine interest and hasn't just decided that he wanted to try his hand in football and it hasn't quite worked out and then he's just left. So it's clearly someone that the board trusts, and whilst they are trying to, as you said, create some stability, promoting from within might not necessarily be the worst worst decision in the world.
And as I said, on the subject of turnover of all aspects of the playing and non-playing staff, of course, we found out this week the rumours were kind of confirmed that unfortunately Daryl Flahaven, our goalkeeping coach, has moved on to Sheffield Wednesday, which seems like a very odd move all round because when I go for a job, I quite fancy being paid. But there we go. We'll see how that works out, and wish him all the best. Adam, your reaction to that?
Pretty much similar to yours, I think. I don't think now would be a great time in the current economic climate to go to a job where being paid is very much optional, as it seems to be at Sheffield Wednesday at the moment. And I know there's a member of this podcast who's not able to be with us this evening, and who would naturally want us to point us to the fact that this is clearly the biggest club in England, to the fact that the sort of places that you can play football in this country, Anfield, Old Trafford, Hillsborough, is obviously right up there with an owner that clearly knows what he's doing. I hope to see you soon, Mr. Allsop. It's a shame. We're going to hear about it in a couple of weeks, as the comment on screen says, according to Tom Cleverley. It's one of those where they're working up their notice, as I think Paul Berne is doing before he takes the role. And I do just want to touch on that as well, because I totally agree with what the guys have said. I will completely defer to Graham's expertise on the guy in person. I've not met him personally, but all of the reviews seem to be good. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that he does have some big shoes to fill. We do look at Andrew Parkinson in terms of what happened recently, and of course, as I've mentioned before, he did have to go. I don't think anyone's particularly saying no, we should have kept him around. He lost a bit of control, shall we say, in the way things were going. But in terms of what he did off the pitch and the revenue that he's got streaming into the club that wasn't there before, albeit in some ways that are perhaps not as welcome as others. He did that sort of job, and Paul Berne is now in a position where he needs to continue that, and he needs to work off the back of what Parkinson did, to his credit, achieve while he was here.
Sorry, I'm not gonna, but I genuinely believe that Andrew Parkinson wasn't the best people person in the world, and I think Paul Berne's apparent ability to be able to speak to fans in a sort of less corporate way will sort of endear him more to the role.
It absolutely will. It absolutely will. You've beaten me to my next point. I think it's one of those where he's going to come in with an awful lot of support and an awful lot of people who want him to do well, for the exact reason that Finn mentions there. For all Parkinson did, both good and bad, he was never personable, at least in public. He never came across as a personable sort of guy, a sort of person who was able to break things down, as we mentioned, in the non-corporate way, if not, which Paul Berne, only having seen the 15-minute interview with him and the fans forum, absolutely is able to do. It's clear that he cares. It's clear that he is a people person based on what we've seen and from what we've heard from the likes of Graham and others who've met the guy. And he's going to get an awful lot of support and an awful lot of people who want him to do well, which is a fantastic position to be in to start off with. And I really hope he does. He seems like a great guy. Seems like the guy we want to have around, and a guy I think we needed to have around at this point, particularly after the last couple of years where board members who shall we say, were once loved have had that love tested by what's happened across the last couple of years in various circles. There's not necessarily been a guy we've all been able to rally around for a little while, perhaps until Tom Cleverley's arrival, but hey, that's on the pitch rather than off it. Paul Berne seems like that guy. We're going to rally around him. He's going to get a lot of support, and I really, really hope he does well.
I can add in a wealth of personal experience to this conversation. Not really, but my friend in the gym works at Trewithen, so worked for Paul Berne, and just said, yeah, he's a good guy and will do a good job with us, basically. So let's hope he's right. Hi, Mark, if you're watching. Moving things on then, as we said, we've got a lovely 2-week break now until our next game, which is at home to Wimbledon, who've made a flying start to the season, up in 5th place at the minute on 21 points, not that far off the automatics, which goes against most people's predictions for how their season would go, it has to be said. We have won our last 5 games at home to Wimbledon, if you include the Pizza Cup win on penalties in 2023, coming from 3-0 down as well on that occasion. So which would suggest that, maybe we've got a good chance against them, but obviously the league table suggests, Graham, it's going to be a pretty tough game, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they've won their last 5, haven't they, in a row? So
last 5 in all comps, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, but perhaps we play better against the better teams, maybe, apart from Cardiff. But I mean, at home, I think they'll come out. I don't think they're going to sit back in the sort of 5-4-1 formation. They are attacking side. They scored a few goals, so I'm actually really looking forward to it. I think that would be a much more entertaining game than we saw yesterday, for sure.
Finn, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, given much of an opportunity to analyse Wimbledon's squad in detail, because, that would be impressive still 2 weeks out from the game. So any memories of previous encounters with Wimbledon? We'll do our best to not mention that thing that happened at Wembley in 2016, shall we?
Funny enough, it's one of my favourite ever games that we've played, and it's the 4-2 where we beat them. I just have terrific memories of that night because it was... One, because I think I went with my granddad, which was really I don't usually do that, and it was good. And it just because it was a really entertaining game. Obviously, Lyle Taylor always used to score against us. I think he scored 2 and missed a penalty, and he did a sort of celebration in front of the Denport end.
Yeah, he did.
Where he folded his arms, and then Ruben Ramirez sort of returned that, and it was just I think it was right in the middle of that sort of upturn in form that nearly saw us make the playoffs after being bottom of the table, which was just ridiculous. And also, David Fox scored an absolute corker of a goal that night, if I remember, top bins volley. So yeah, that would be the one that would stick out. Yes, obviously the Wembley one, but yeah, we're not going over that. So, it's always a tight game, I think, when we play Wimbledon most times, and a club that I have a lot of respect for, to be honest, because of what they've done to, reclaim their club and rubbish MK Dons, which they have managed to do because MK Dons find themselves in League Two. So yeah, it's going to be a tough game, but ironically, I think it's going to be one that we actually thrive in because we seem like that kind of team that's going to get a great win against Wimbledon, and then we won't talk about the next game after that because that won't end very well, will it?
Well, yeah. Exeter City were coming for you, Chance, in Block 16 yesterday. Really? Still 3 weeks away, guys. Not obsessed with them or anything. Adam, any good or bad memories of coming up against Wimbledon over the years?
I would go for the good one as well. That is the one that Finn's mentioned with the Lyle Taylor celebration that was copied by Lemires on that night. Wonderful Fox Worldy. A particularly bad one happened in exactly the same year against AFC Wimbledon, and went the other way. I think it was Boxing Day, where Fox once again scored a worldie, and we managed to lose to an unfortunate moment from Jan Songo, which I'm reliably informed are few and far between, but I struggle to see it. So yeah, this has got a couple of ways against Wimbledon over the years. I think at home we have generally had the better of them. I unsurprisingly was not at the Pizza Cup game, but yeah, that's one of many wins that we've had at home to them in recent time. I think it was also our first win of the season in 18-19. Freddie Ladapo heading in when, and I will stick up for the guy because he doesn't get enough love here. Graham Carey was already going to score, and the Zappo helped it over the line. So yeah, just one that I felt was worth mentioning. So we do tend to beat them at home. I do have a fear about this one though. I'm going to go against the grain slightly in terms of how I think this will happen. Because Wimbledon are having a great season. They absolutely nobody expected them to be in the top 5. They have won the last 4 in the league, as the comment mentioned. As Graham mentioned, the last 5 in all competitions they've won. They've done so in a very specific way. They're not the sort who I think are going to come out at us. They're not the sort I can see attacking us. I believe they rank 23rd for possession, 23rd for touches in the opposition box, 22nd for corners won. They will come to home park, in my view, to sit in, to soak up as much pressure as they can, which they're very good at, as the table has demonstrated. They're very good at soaking up pressure, and they will try and hit us on the break, which, contrary to what was usually happening against the top sides, this seems to be our kryptonite. This seems like, to me, that it's going to be a really ugly, really gritty game where if we're going to beat them, we're not going to do so by taking advantage of fast spaces. We're going to need to break them down. Can we do it? I mean, look at the last 2 home games for evidence. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong on that one. And regardless, if they do sit in and invite pressure, I mean, it's got to break eventually. So maybe we can break them down. And our record against them, as we've mentioned, is very good. But yeah, we're going to have a nice 2 weeks off. And for me, it's not a game at the moment that I think after that fortnight is going to have my pulse racing as I look forward to it. But we'll see. Maybe my low expectations will be met with a pleasant surprise. And we can add to that succession of excellent wins at home to Wimbledon over the years.
I mean, having those ball possession stats just to hand 2 weeks before the game is superb. Top work. Get yourself a job.
That's one word for it. That's very much one of the more pleasant words for it.
Get yourself a job in football analysis, Adam, pronto is what I would say to that. Score predictions then, guys. I know it's a fair way out from the game, and as Adam said earlier, who knows what the kind of starting lineup will be, pending injuries, etc., and availability. But what do you guys reckon?
I think we'll win 2-1. We'll have our best team out. There won't be any more injuries in the 2-0. I mean, I am a bit wary of Galloway going away to. I've forgotten who they're playing. Actually, there's 2 games he's going to play, so that's a worry. But hopefully Mitchell will be back in that time. So 2-1 and a Talai double.
1-0. 1-0. I think I put it on my predictions. So 1-0 Talai.
I'm going to be that guy based on what I said earlier. I will also go 1-0, but 1-0 the other way. A really horrible, nasty 1-0 home defeat that, if I'm proved wrong, I'm very happy.
Well, I was going to say that all sounds far too positive if we all go for a win. And if we're all predicting Tully to score, that does say a lot about the lack of other options on the goal scoring front, doesn't it? Yeah, so that's about it from us this evening. Obviously, like I say, 2-week break now coming up. Maybe go and watch Plymouth Parkway. They're at home to Bracknell Town next week, but get yourself a bit of local football for that football fix before Argyle are playing.
And Plymouth women on Sunday.
Yes, very much. Is that a home park, Graham?
It's home park, yeah.
It is fantastic.
Top of the table clash.
Get yourself down there as well. Football double for the weekend. Just under 600 of you were watching tonight. Thank you so much for giving up your Sunday evening to do so. We will be back soon, whether it's for a little preview piece or post Wimbledon. We will confirm. Just keep an eye on our socials. Thank you for all the comments, likes, and all of that jazz. And thank you for voting, all of you who have done so on the Football Content Awards. Please do keep going for that, and we'll probably get some content out for that when we go there next month. Thanks very much, guys, and have a great week. See you soon.
Cheers.
Right.